All right, here's 14 women you must know for your APUS exam. And I lied to you because I'm going to tag 3 on at the end. So it's actually not 14, it's 17. And I better see them on your paper. Sorry, here we go. So, time period 2, we got Anne Hutchinson. This is the 1620s. Anne Hutchinson is a Puritan living in that Massachusetts Bay Colony where everything is super, super strict, Orthodox religion, and she holds prayer meetings in her house and reads the Bible and promotes the idea of direct personal like revelation and prayer and scripture reading from God, which is like girlfriend, because in the Puritan society only the ministers, only the clergy had that connection to God. So for a woman, first of all, a lay person, a regular person, and a woman to claim that, heresy. She was tried for heresy. She was banished. And that kind of highlights the like limits of religious freedom in early colonial America. You're Puritan or you get out. Okay. Moving on to Abigail Adams. Abigail Adams, this is time period 3. This is post-revolution. She's the wife of our second president, John Adams. She's best remembered for urging her husband to remember the ladies as he helped draft some of our founding documents. So she advocated for women's education and legal protections for women during the revolutionary period through her husband. So she's not a political leader. Her letters just kind of show what was it like for an early American wife in the upper class. And even though she's a strong intellectual and kind of pro-feminist-ish for time period 3, it just shows that women were just subjugated in the revolutionary period, and women don't get a lot of constitutional rights, even with her urging. All right, moving on. Sacagawea, I've kind of already gone over that. She's a Shoshone woman. After the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, guides Lewis and Clark through that area that was added onto our nation. She helps like navigate the Rocky Mountains, all the areas that they need to be careful of. She helps keep the peace between these white people and the natives out there. She became like this symbol of Native American women resilience and her contribution, a person of color's massive contribution to the U.S. expansion and like U.S. expansion. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. So this is like 1803, 1804-ish. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is next, time period 4. So freaking important. A leading figure in early women's rights, and the primary author of the Seneca Falls Declaration, the Declaration of Sentiments. Basically, the men have done this, this, and this. Taking the children after a divorce, no property rights for women. If you're married, your paycheck goes to your husband. Women can't inherit anything. Women are made subservient. Men are playing God. Those are the things in the Declaration of Sentiments that we read in class. And she advocates for those legal reforms for property and divorce rights for women. She also pushes for women's equality in the public and private spheres, but like more so like she pushes for women's suffrage, but she never gets to see it. She dies in 1902, but she laid the foundation for the women's rights, for the 19th Amendment, for women's suffrage. That's around 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the Seneca Falls Convention. Harriet Beecher Stowe is next on my list. She's time period 5. She is the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, 1852. Write it down. She is a white woman. Let me zoom in. Why am I not zooming in on these people? She is a white woman who publishes this like bestseller about the horrors of living in slavery. And many people in the North weren't exposed to that. And this book is the first thing that exposes them to that. And it humanized enslaved people and exposed the brutal realities to a bigger, wider audience. It was seen as like propaganda in the South. It was put on burn book lists and censored by the government in the South. And actually, she's invited to the White House and meets Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln says, "Are you the little lady who started this big, great war?" Talking about the Civil War, because her book was so influential in steering public opinion away from slavery. Sojourner Truth is next. I talked about her in the African American video. She was born into slavery but escaped from Maryland, I believe. Fact check me on that. And became a powerful speaker and advocate for both abolition and women's rights. Her big speech, Ain't I a Woman, talking about how difficult it is to be both an African American and a woman in the United States. She worked with Frederick Douglass and others, supported the Union during the Civil War. Just a big activist and faith-based activist. Moving on to Harriet Tubman. She's a conductor on the Underground Railroad. You guys know the Underground Railroad. Not a real railroad, but a system of safe houses that African Americans could take to escape and flee to the North. She led over 300 people to freedom, going back, taking multiple trips, was a Union spy during the North, during the Civil War as well. Let's move on to Jane Addams. Ooh, I love to talk about Jane Addams. Jane Addams was really influential in time period 6 and time period 7. So think like 1880s-ish. Founder of Hull House in Chicago. This is the settlement movement house, part of the larger social gospel movement, where these white middle-class women, they kind of don't have anything to do. So they get super involved in their churches, and this idea of social gospel, spread your faith through good works, make the world better. And that's leading into the progressive movement, right? So they set up these settlement houses where they live and work with immigrants to teach them skills, to make them employable, provide them childcare, to try and get better footing in the United States. So it's very pro-immigrant and improving conditions for immigrants. All right, Ida B. Wells, talked about her as well. She's kind of a muckraker, exposing the horrors of lynching. 3 of her friends were lynched, which is violent chasing down, attacking, and killing from a mob, usually towards a person of color. And she publishes statistics about lynching, and a muckraker is someone who tries to rake up the muck and expose society. She did a good job of that. Moving on, time period 7 as well, Carrie A. Nation. There is a push for prohibition, anti-alcohol, the temperance movement. She's a radical member of the temperance movement, often known for taking her hatchet. There she is with her hatchet. This is like turn of the century, 1890s, early 1900s. She dies in 1911, maybe, somewhere around there. She is known for taking her hatchet and smashing saloons, the bars, and the barrels, and letting the alcohol flow to protest alcohol consumption. She believed that alcohol was the root cause, and the temperance movement believed that alcohol was the root cause of domestic violence and poverty, that men would drink themselves into an economic hole, beat their wives, beat their children, that sort of thing. Controversial, right? But she makes headlines because of it. Well-behaved women rarely make history, right? And drew attention to the temperance cause, which eventually, past her lifetime in the 1920s, will result in prohibition. Okay? All right, Alice Paul. Alice Paul is a suffragist who will lead the one of the parties going towards the 19th Amendment. She founded the National Women's Party and pushed for the passage of the 19th Amendment, organizing parades, picketing the White House, and she was also imprisoned a lot of times with other women. And she was more like, I'm not going to act like a lady type of civil rights activist. One of her methods was going on hunger strike in the prisons, and they had to force feed her to make her break her strike. So just like a very interesting kind of more militant and revitalized the women's suffrage movement. And she actually saw the passage of the 9th Amendment. She also helped draft the Equal Rights Amendment, which was never ratified. We'll talk about that later. Eleanor Roosevelt, World War II-ish. So put like 1940s, 1940s. She is the first lady of FDR, our president during the Great Depression, New Deal, and World War II. She transformed the role of first lady. She advocates for civil rights, women's rights, social justice. She held press conferences. She allowed female reporters wherever she went. She wrote a daily newspaper column about what she was doing, about her political opinions. Just extremely active. And we now see active first ladies because of her. After FDR's death, In 1945, she is a delegate to the United Nations. She helps draft some human rights stuff. She's just extremely political, although she's not a politician. She's just the wife of a president. And that is just a show of a woman using the lot that she's been given to do what she wants to do. And I think that's a really enduring legacy of Eleanor Roosevelt. Rosa Parks, we talked about her already, sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. She refused to give up her seat. This was all planned by the NAACP. Her arrest led to an over a year-long boycott led by Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to boycott the Montgomery bus system and bankrupt it into stopping segregation on buses. She had been long active in the NAACP before her famous protest, and she kind of becomes this like symbol of dignity and resistance. Quiet strength is kind of her, like, not her motto, but like her MO. All right, Betty Friedan, and then I'm going to add 3 more. Sorry. Betty Friedan, this is going to be more modern wave feminism, second or third wave feminism. Second wave, I lied to you. She wrote a book called The Feminine Mystique in 1963, and it criticized the limited role of women, saying that women, housewives, in the 1950s, women were pushed back into the home, pushed back into that like method of conformity where like dad has this white collar middle management job, mom stays home with the kids. And she says, I've talked to hundreds of thousands of women. I've done research on women, and they all feel this discontent. And the discontent is some of them don't want to be housewives, but they feel like they have to. The limited role of women. And sparked the second wave of feminism. She co-founded the National Organization for Women, NOW, which pushed for equal rights in employment, closing the wage gap, education, letting women into higher education institutions, and politics. It wasn't until the 1970s that women could even get a credit card. They had to have a husband sign papers to allow them to have a credit card. So that's the sort of thing that Betty Friedan is fighting against, right? She shifted the national conversation about women's roles, and the second wave feminism will be about women in the workplace, about reproductive rights, abortion, Roe v. Wade in 1973. And so she laid this groundwork for talking about gender in politics. Now, she kind of has this like versus someone. She's kind of versus this girl named Phyllis Schlafly, who is not on here. She is an anti second wave feminist. She's a conservative activist, a woman who led opposition to the Equal Rights Movement in the 1970s. She argued that the Equal Rights Amendment would actually like get rid of the rights of women to be a housewife. Her fear was that like women would feel too pressured to work, and that would harm family structure. So Phil Schlafly's activism helped prevent the ERA's ratification, and it's still not ratified to this day. And she was like this counter force to Betty Friedan. So they're like versus each other, essentially. All right, I'm going to add 2 more. I'm so sorry. Let me see them on your timelines. Hillary Clinton, 2010s-ish. Much more active prior to them, but Hillary Clinton had a big career as a first lady. She was first lady of Bill Clinton in the 90s up to the year 2000. And she was a U.S. senator. She was Secretary of State under Obama. She was a Democratic presidential nominee. She was one of the first women to win like this major party nomination. Her career has kind of shown blended kind of advocacy for women with children in mainstream politics. So her 2016 campaign represented a milestone. First woman to win a major party nomination, but it did reveal persistent sexism, and she got a lot of crap in the media just for being a woman, for what she was wearing, for what she was eating, stuff that you would never call out a man for in a presidential debate or a presidential race, and that was kind of polarizing for women to see, and she's polarizing because she's just interesting. All right. And lastly, I don't have her on here because I did not make this. Someone else made this. I'm just making the video. Kamala Harris, 2020. I want you to write it down. She is significant, my friends. Love her or hate her, she's the first Black American and the first South Asian American and the first woman to be a vice president. That's freaking insane. 2020. Flip back to 1920 and women just got the right to vote. And 100 years later, we have a woman vice president and could have been a woman president. She was pretty close. She broke barriers in a role that had only ever been held by white people and white men and made this like historic shift in American politics. She was a U.S. Senator. She was a former Attorney General of California. She fought for criminal justice reform and civil rights, gay rights, greater representation and diversity in politics. And you need to know her. Thank you. Goodbye.